They woke choking. The air had turned to poison. Somewhere behind the walls, something was burning, violently, and the heat was rising by the second. Lights flickered in their sockets. Smoke crept under the doors like a living thing. And when passengers stepped into the hallway, they didn't find help. They found fire. No alarm, no warning. Just the smell of melting paint, the roar of flames, and the quiet, terrifying realization that the ship was already dying. This was supposed to be a vacation, a weekend escape from winter, a cheap cruise from Miami to Nassau on a vessel sold as safe, stylish, and serene. But by the time the sun rose, the Yarmouth Castle would be gone, and so would 90 lives. The ship had history, and none of it was good. Launched in 1927 as the Evangelista, she was a pre-war coastal steamer meant for short journeys in protected waters. Her interior was wood-paneled, her bulkheads made from old-style framing, her insulation flammable. In the decades that followed, she changed names, owners, and flags more than a dozen times. By 1965, she was being operated by a budget cruise line that specialized in quick trips from Florida to the Bahamas. The company marketed her as romantic and vintage. But they never mentioned that she was a fire trap. Her fire detection systems were practically non-existent. Only a few of her compartments had sprinklers. Escape routes were narrow and unsigned. Lifeboats had been lowered only during inspections, not drills. And those inspections? Rushed, incomplete, often performed by underpaid inspectors who relied on company hospitality to fund their visits. Still, the passengers came. Most were retirees. Some were families. Many were older couples spending their savings on a last great trip. Among them, a grandmother taking her first ever cruise, a jazz band hired to play for the onboard ballroom, and several honeymooners still in the glow of their weddings. None of them suspected they were stepping onto a ship that shouldn't have sailed at all. It started around 12:30 a.m. Somewhere deep within the ship, in a storage area packed with old mattresses and oily rags, a fire took hold. No one saw it at first. The area was unmanned, unmonitored, and lacking basic fire protection. A crew member later said the room had been locked but not sealed. Any spark could have ignited it. And that's exactly what happened. A chemical reaction, a smoldering cigarette, faulty wiring. No one ever pinpointed the exact cause. But when the door was opened, the flames burst outward with the force of a blowtorch. A steward, seeing the blaze, slammed the door and ran. He did not raise the alarm. The fire spread in silence. Through ventilation ducts, up stairwells, beneath floorboards, the materials used in the ship's construction, lacquered paneling, oil-based insulation, wooden trim, only accelerated the disaster. By the time the bridge was notified, it was already too late. Passengers reported strange sensations before they even understood what was happening. One woman described waking up with burning lungs, thinking she'd caught a cold. Another said her husband opened the door to the hallway and collapsed instantly, overcome by smoke. In the cabins nearest the fire, heat warped the metal door frames, sealing people inside. Some screamed. Others never had time. The crew was not prepared. Many had no training. There had been no meaningful fire drills. When the fire reached the midsection of the ship, junior stewards were seen jumping over passengers to get to the deck. Lifeboat stations were in chaos, some unmanned, some already consumed by flames. Passengers were told to stay calm, even as the walls around them blistered and burned. Captain Byron Vustinas, meanwhile, had fled. He claimed later that he attempted to coordinate evacuation from a lifeboat, but multiple witnesses, including survivors from nearby ships, reported seeing him rowing away with crew while passengers were still aboard, screaming for help. His lifeboat had food, water, a radio, but not one survivor. The Bahama Star, captained by Carl Brown, picked up a distress call just after 1:15 a.m. Brown pushed the engines to full and raced toward the flames. As his crew approached, they saw it, a burning ship floating like a ghost against the black Atlantic. Fire leapt from every deck. The superstructure had collapsed in places. Dozens of people were in the water, some clinging to lifebuoys, others to bodies. Captain Brown tried to hail the Yarmouth Castle on radio. No response. Then they found the lifeboat. Inside, Captain Vustinas. Brown asked if passengers were still aboard. Vustinas reportedly shrugged. There's nothing to be done. Enraged, Brown ordered his own boats into the sea. His crew, many off duty, some just cooks or bartenders, risked their lives to drag survivors from the water. They lifted burned passengers aboard, applied makeshift bandages, pulled unconscious children from the ocean. They didn't wait for orders. They acted like sailors should. The stories that emerged later were harrowing. A teenager had carried his grandmother through smoke-filled corridors, only to lose her when she slipped from his arms into the sea. A band member was seen using his trumpet case as a flotation device. One steward, consumed by guilt, was last seen diving back into the ship to try and pull people from the lounge. He never came back. Most of the ship's lifeboats had either burned or failed to deploy. Some were stuck. Others shattered on impact with the waves. Of 13 boats, only 5 were usable. Passengers floated in circles, calling out names of family members who were never found. Sharks circled the wreckage. The flames lit the sky for miles. And then, at 3:12 a.m., the ship groaned, tilted forward, and sank. All that was left was oil, ash, and silence. The final toll, 90 dead. Dozens more injured, many permanently. Entire families destroyed, and yet, no one was held accountable. The Coast Guard launched an investigation. They found damning evidence: failed drills, expired safety gear, faulty alarms, lifeboat systems in disrepair. The fireproofing had never been upgraded. Inspection records had been falsified. Captain Vustinas was found grossly negligent for abandoning his post, but he never faced criminal charges. He was stripped of his license and disappeared from public view. But the outcry did something. Congress passed new maritime safety laws in 1966. Wooden passenger ships were banned from U.S. routes unless refitted to modern standards. International maritime regulations were overhauled. The event became a turning point in cruise ship safety. But for the survivors and the families of the dead, no law could make it right. The Yarmouth Castle rests today beneath 1,500 feet of water off the coast of the Bahamas. No salvage was attempted. No memorial was ever built. But if you were to drift over that stretch of ocean, on a quiet night, under a full moon, you might still see the flicker of something below. Not a flame, not a shadow, but a memory. The memory of a ship that was sold as safe, a voyage that promised joy, and a night that delivered horror. Thank you for listening to the Sunken Ledger. Subscribe for more true stories from the depths.